Welcome to this explainer. We're jumping right into a massive, frankly mind-blowing macro to micro journey through India's incredible ecological wealth. Seriously, we're taking a deep dive into the raw numbers, the cutting-edge science, and the boots-on-the-ground efforts to protect some of the most unique life forms on our planet.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover what is biodiversity, then India as a mega-diverse country. After that, conservation, specifically in situ versus ex situ. Then we'll hit major wildlife projects, and finally wrap up with the species recovery program. All right, part one, what is biodiversity? Let's quickly set the baseline for what we're actually measuring when we talk about life on Earth.
At its core, biodiversity is just the variability among living organisms. But, scientists don't just look at it as one big bucket. They break it down across genetic, species, and ecosystem levels. And to actually measure it, they use three specific scales. Think of alpha diversity as the local richness right within a single community. Beta diversity, on the other hand, measures the change or the sensitivity when you move between different environments. And gamma diversity, that's the bird's eye view, the overall dynamic across a massive geographical landscape. Now, there's a really crucial difference between simply having a lot of species, which is richness, and having a healthy balance of those species, known as evenness. Imagine two different forests. Both might have exactly 4 types of trees, so equal richness. But if one forest has an even 25% split of each tree type, and the other is totally dominated by just one single species taking up 70% of the space, well, they aren't equally healthy, are they? True ecological stability relies absolutely heavily on both, having many species and having a nice, even balance among them. Moving right along to Section 2, India as a mega-diverse country. Let's see how this plays out on the global stage. We have to start with this absolutely striking fact. When you look at the entire global landmass, India accounts for only a tiny 2.4% of the world's total geographical area. Think about that, just 2.4%. But here is the kicker. Despite that remarkably small land footprint, India holds an astonishing 7 to 8% of all the world's recorded species. It's a completely disproportionate wealth of life. And because of that incredible concentration of flora and fauna, India actually ranks as one of the 17 designated mega-diverse countries on Earth. But as you can imagine, managing that much biodiversity is complicated. Take the Western Ghats, for instance. It's often called the ecological water tower of India because it literally feeds the major southern rivers. Figuring out how to protect it has sparked major policy debates. Back in 2011, the Gadgil Committee recommended declaring 100% of the Western Ghats as an ecologically sensitive area. Their plan was a complete ban on major development, using a bottom-up approach driven by local village councils. However, balancing absolute environmental protection with economic development is a really tricky tightrope walk. Facing concerns over practicality, the subsequent Kastar-Rangan Committee in 2013 recommended a top-down approach instead. They suggested protecting only 37% of the area, while systematically phasing out existing mining operations. So how exactly do we actually protect all these species? That brings us to Section 3, conservation, specifically in situ versus ex situ.
The first method scientists use is in situ, which basically means on-site conservation. This is protecting species right where they naturally live. Think national parks or sanctuaries. It's generally way more cost-effective, and crucially, it maintains natural evolutionary conditions. On the flip side, we have ex situ, or off-site conservation. This involves artificial preservation, like gene banks, seed banks, or captive breeding programs. Now, ex situ is highly technical and definitely more expensive, but it becomes an absolute necessity when an animal's natural habitat is just too compromised to keep them alive.
A perfect real-world example of in situ conservation is a biosphere reserve. What's truly fascinating here is how the zoning elegantly manages human activity to protect nature. Right in the center, you have the core zone. Absolutely no human interference is allowed there, none. Surrounding that is the buffer zone, where limited, controlled scientific research and education can happen. And finally, the outer layer is the transition zone. This is where active community cooperation, human settlements, and sustainable tourism actually take place. It's a brilliant, layered gradient of protection. And India's in situ network is growing fast. Based on the latest 2025-2026 data, India now has 18 biosphere reserves. 13 of those are internationally recognized by UNESCO's Man in the Biosphere program, with the newest addition being the cold desert in Himachal Pradesh. And guys, this matters to all of us. These aren't just empty tracts of land, they are critical buffers against climate change. The country also boasts 98 Ramsar wetland sites now, plus India has secured 2 critical marine hope spots in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Lakshadweep Islands. These tie directly into Mission Blue's global 30 by 30 goal, which is a massive push to protect 30% of the world's oceans by 2030, specifically focusing on blue carbon sinks and unique marine life. Let's shift our focus to Section 4, Major Wildlife Projects, where we look at targeted efforts for India's most iconic animals. India has this incredibly rich timeline of monumental wildlife projects. Project Tiger kicked off way back in 1973. Then came Project Elephant in 1992, specifically designed to protect migratory corridors and lessen human-elephant conflict. In 2006, the absolutely urgent Vulture Recovery Plan began, but the most significant recent update happened in 2023-2024. The government pulled off a mega merger of the tiger and elephant initiatives into one combined Project Tiger and Elephant. It makes a lot of sense. It beautifully optimizes funding and habitat management in forests where both species already live, while still keeping their specific conservation tasks distinct. When you look specifically at tigers, the success has been staggering. Today, India is home to approximately 3,682 tigers. That is roughly 75% of the entire global wild population. In fact, India achieved the international T/2 goal, which literally meant doubling its tiger population, well ahead of the 2022 deadline. And what's really cool is how technology is driving this. The government's M-Stripes monitoring system is now supercharged with artificial intelligence and drone tracking. They're using high-tech tools to optimize anti-poaching patrols and monitor ecological conditions in real time. But, it hasn't all been success stories. We really have to talk about the vulture crisis. Between 1993 and 2002, India witnessed a catastrophic 97 to 99% collapse in its vulture population, almost wiped out entirely. The culprit? A veterinary painkiller called diclofenac that was given to cattle. It caused fatal kidney failure in the vultures that scavenged the carcasses. Once they figured this out, the government strictly banned diclofenac in 2006. Today, under the Vulture Action Plan, they are systematically pulling these vital scavengers back from the absolute brink. They're establishing 100-kilometer safe zones, setting up vulture restaurants that provide poison-free meat, and running specialized breeding centers like Jatayu in Uttar Pradesh, which is actually the world's first conservation center for the Asian king vulture. That brings us down to the most micro level of our explainer today, Section 5, the Species Recovery Program. This is the desperate, highly targeted fight to save specific, exceptionally vulnerable animals. This all falls under a massive government umbrella scheme called the Integrated Development of Wildlife Habitats. Within that scheme is the Species Recovery Program, which currently zeroes in on 22 critically endangered and endangered species. Every single one of these animals is granted the absolute highest level of legal protection under Schedule 1 of India's Wildlife Protection Act, not to mention strict global bans on commercial trade. Let's put some faces to this data, shall we? Take the wild water buffalo, native to the wet grasslands of Assam and Chhattisgarh. Its biggest modern threat isn't even just poaching anymore. It's the loss of genetic purity from interbreeding with domestic cattle, along with livestock diseases. Contrast that with the majestic Asiatic lion. This lion's entire wild population is restricted to one single location, the Gir dry deciduous forests in Gujarat. Having all your eggs in one basket like that makes them terrifyingly vulnerable to a sudden disease outbreak or natural disaster. And the habitats these animals rely on can be incredibly unique. The sandgai, or brow antler deer, exists in literally just one place in the world, the floating grass islands of Cable Lamjaw National Park in Manipur. If those floating islands degrade, the deer disappears forever. Then there's the dugong, a gentle marine mammal you might know as the sea cow. As the only strictly herbivorous marine mammal out there, its entire existence relies heavily on shallow coastal seagrass beds. This makes it tragically susceptible to getting tangled in fishing nets and suffering from seagrass degradation. The recovery program also spotlights a few other fascinating creatures, each facing totally distinct modern threats. The great Indian bustard is one of the heaviest flying birds in the world. Sadly, its size and poor frontal vision make it incredibly prone to fatal collisions with overhead power lines. Then you have the hungule, India's only native red deer, which is backed into a corner in Kashmir, severely threatened by habitat fragmentation. And finally, the Ganges river dolphin. Get this, it's functionally blind. It navigates and hunts entirely using echolocation, just like a bat. But that makes it incredibly vulnerable to river pollution and underwater noise. And honestly, this brings us to the core of why we are looking at all this data today. The complex policies, the merging of wildlife projects, the strict zoning rules. It all funnels down to one stark reality. From the heavy great Indian bustard to the unique floating habitat of the Songhai deer, will our future generations actually get to see these incredible species out in the wild? Or will they only know them from pictures in a textbook? That is the ultimate question driving India's massive conservation efforts right now. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next one.